us. I am so sorry, my love.
I thought I was flying home to bury my father. I thought the hardest part would be saying goodbye to the man who raised me, who taught me how to ride a bike, who walked me down the aisle 7 years ago when I married Deshawn. I was wrong. What I found out at my father's funeral didn't just break my heart. It shattered everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and the man lying in that casket. Let me tell you what happened when grief pulled back the curtain on a secret that should have stayed buried. Trust me when I say this. Some truths don't set you free. Some truths trap you in a nightmare you can't wake up from. Before we get into this, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Your support means everything. Let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you who I really am. My name is Sage Montgomery, and I'm 35 years old. I grew up in a small Black community in South Carolina, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where Sunday dinners at Big Mama's house were mandatory, and where secrets had a way of staying buried until they didn't. My father, Lawrence Bennett, was a respected man, a professor of African American literature at the local college, a deacon at First Baptist, the kind of man who wore crisp button-downs even on Saturdays and could quote James Baldwin and Langston Hughes from memory. He raised me and my two younger siblings, my sister Kennedy and my brother Terrell, with firm hands and a soft heart. Mama, Diane Bennett, was his college sweetheart. They had one of those love stories people still talked about at church cookouts. I left South Carolina when I was 22, right after college, and moved to Atlanta with Deshawn. We'd been together since we were 16 years old, high school sweethearts from different worlds that somehow fit together perfectly. Deshawn grew up in foster care. He never knew his biological father, and his mother died when he was young. He bounced around different homes until he aged out of the system at 18. But you'd never know it from looking at him. He was driven, ambitious, had put himself through college on scholarships and sheer determination. We built a good life in Atlanta. He worked in IT consulting. I taught middle school English. We had a cute townhouse in East Point, talked about having kids someday, spent our weekends trying new restaurants and visiting family back home every few months. Life was good, normal, until that Tuesday in March when my phone rang at 6:47 in the morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I saw my sister Kennedy's name flash across the screen. My stomach dropped immediately. Kennedy never called that early unless something was wrong. "Ken," I answered, already feeling my heart start to race. "Sage." Her voice cracked. "It's Daddy." The coffee cup slipped from my hand. I didn't even hear it shatter on the tile floor. "What happened?" "Heart attack. Last night after Bible study. Sage, he didn't make it. He's gone." The world tilted sideways. Deshawn came running into the kitchen when he heard me scream. He held me while I sobbed, while Kennedy cried on the other end of the line, while the coffee pooled around our feet and the morning light coming through the window felt like an insult. My father was dead at 63 years old. Gone. Just like that. We flew to South Carolina 2 days later. The flight felt endless. Deshawn held my hand the entire time, rubbing his thumb across my knuckles in that way he always did when he knew I was hurting. He'd only met my father a handful of times before we got married, but they'd gotten along well. Daddy appreciated that Deshawn treated me right, that he was building something from nothing, that he understood the value of hard work. "You okay, baby?" Deshawn whispered as the plane began its descent. I nodded, even though I wasn't, even though I didn't know if I'd ever be okay again. My mother picked us up from the airport. She looked smaller somehow, like grief had physically diminished her. Her eyes were red and swollen, her usually immaculate hair wrapped in a simple scarf. "My baby," she whispered when she hugged me, and I felt her whole body shaking. We drove to my parents' house in silence. The same house I grew up in. The same porch where Daddy used to sit on summer evenings reading his books. The same driveway where he taught me to drive, where he took photos before my prom, where he'd hugged Deshaun and told him, "You take care of my girl." Kennedy and Terrell were already there when we arrived. More hugs, more tears, more of that hollow feeling that comes when someone's absence is so loud you can't hear anything else. The funeral was set for Saturday. 3 days away. 3 days of casseroles from church ladies, visits from family friends, and making arrangements that no daughter should have to make at 35. Deshaun was perfect during those days. He ran errands, picked up relatives from the airport, helped Terrell with the program for the service. He knew I needed him to be strong because I couldn't be. I spent most of my time going through old photo albums with Mama, listening to her tell stories about Daddy that I'd heard 1,000 times but needed to hear again. Their wedding day, the day I was born, family vacations to Myrtle Beach, Christmas mornings. He loved you so much, Mama kept saying. All 3 of you. You were his whole world. I believed her. God, I believed her. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of March day where winter hasn't quite let go. I stood in front of my childhood bedroom mirror, adjusting my black dress, trying to recognize the woman staring back at me. I looked older, tired. My eyes were swollen from 3 days of crying. Deshaun came up behind me, zipping up the back of my dress. "You ready?" he asked softly. "No," I said, "but I don't have a choice, do I?" The funeral was at First Baptist, the church where I was baptized, where I sang in the youth choir, where my father had served as a deacon for over 20 years. The sanctuary was packed. I shouldn't have been surprised. Daddy knew everyone. But seeing that many people there to pay respects made it real in a way it hadn't been before. We sat in the front row. Mama, me, Deshaun, Kennedy, Terrell, and a handful of other close family members. The casket was closed, covered in white roses. Daddy's favorite. The service was beautiful. Pastor Williams gave the eulogy, talking about Daddy's dedication to education, his love for his family, his service to the community. The church choir sang, "His eye is on the sparrow." People stood up to share memories, former students, fellow church members, old friends. I held it together until Kennedy got up to speak. She talked about how Daddy used to braid her hair every morning before school, even though he was terrible at it, and her braids were always lopsided. How he never missed a single one of her dance recitals. How he called her every Sunday after she moved to Charlotte just to check in. I felt Deshaun squeeze my hand as I started crying again. And then something strange happened. During the repast at the church fellowship hall, while everyone was eating fried chicken and macaroni and cheese and sharing stories, a woman approached my mother. I was standing nearby, accepting condolences from one of Daddy's colleagues, when I heard the woman say, "Mrs. Bennett, I'm so sorry for your loss. Lawrence was a good man." The woman was older, maybe in her early 80s, with silver hair and kind eyes. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. Mama thanked her, and the woman continued. "I knew him when he was just a boy, before he went away to school. I'm so glad he got to live such a full life, even if—" she paused, seeming to catch herself. "Well, I'm just sorry he's gone." "Thank you, Sister Pauline," Mama said quietly. Sister Pauline. I remembered her now. She lived a few streets over from my grandmother's old house. She'd been friends with my father's mother before she passed. But it was what she said next that made my blood run cold. "Such a shame about the boy," Sister Pauline said, shaking her head. "I always wondered if Lawrence ever knew, if anyone ever told him the truth." Mama's face went pale. "Sister Pauline, I don't think—" "Oh, I know. We don't speak of such things. But that poor child, growing up without his father, and Lawrence never knowing he had a son. It was cruel what they did. Just cruel. The room felt like it was spinning. I watched my mother gently guide Sister Pauline away, saw the panic in her eyes, heard her whisper something I couldn't make out. What boy? What son? I looked around for Deshawn and found him across the room, talking to Terrell. He caught my eye and smiled, that same warm smile that had made me fall in love with him when we were teenagers. I smiled back, but my mind was racing. If you're hooked on this story, please don't forget to like and comment. Let me know what you think is about to happen. I didn't get a chance to ask Mama about Sister Pauline's comment. The rest of the day was a blur of more visitors, more food, more hugs from people whose names I'd forgotten. By the time we got home that evening, Mama had retreated to her bedroom, exhausted and grief-stricken. Kennedy and Terrell had gone to stay with our aunt. Deshawn and I were alone in my old bedroom, the room that still had my high school track trophies on the shelf and a poster of Lauryn Hill on the wall. "You okay?" Deshawn asked, pulling off his tie. "Yeah, I lied. Just tired." He kissed my forehead. "Get some rest, baby. Tomorrow will be easier." But sleep wouldn't come. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Sister Pauline's words. Such a shame about the boy. Lawrence never knowing he had a son. What did that mean? Did my father have another child? A son he didn't know about? It seemed impossible. My father was the most responsible man I'd ever known. He wasn't the type to abandon a child. But Sister Pauline had said he never knew, that someone had kept it from him. I turned over, trying to quiet my mind. Beside me, Deshawn was already asleep, breathing deeply. I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was looking for mysteries where there were none, because I was grieving and my mind was playing tricks on me. I told myself to let it go, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. Sunday morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a determination to find out what Sister Pauline had meant. I waited until after breakfast, until Deshawn had gone with Terrell to return some chairs to the church, until Mama was in the garden cutting flowers like she did every Sunday. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I went into my father's study and started going through his things. The study was exactly as he'd left it. Books lining every wall, organized by author and subject. His desk covered in papers, lesson plans, student essays, notes for a book he'd been working on about the Harlem Renaissance. I felt like an intruder rifling through his drawers looking for, what? Evidence of a secret child. A hidden family? I found nothing. Bills. Old letters from colleagues. Photos of us kids at various ages. A birthday card I'd made him when I was 7 that he'd kept all these years. I was about to give up when I noticed a box on the top shelf of his closet. It was just a plain cardboard box, the kind you'd get from an office supply store. I pulled it down and opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to my father at his parents' old address, all postmarked from the late 1970s and early 1980s. I pulled one out and opened it. "Dear Lawrence, I know your parents said you don't want to hear from me, but I'm writing anyway because our son deserves to know his father. He turned 3 last week. He's smart like you, Lawrence. He asks about you. I don't know what to tell him. Please, if you ever get these letters, please just write back. Please let me know you care, that he exists. Vivian." My hands started shaking. I pulled out another letter. "Lawrence. He started kindergarten this year. The other kids have their daddies at the father-son events. He comes home crying, asking why his daddy doesn't love him. Your parents told me to stop writing, but how can I? This is your son, Lawrence. Your son. Vivian. Another one. Lawrence. I'm getting married to a good man who's willing to raise your son as his own, since you've made it clear you want nothing to do with him. I won't write anymore, but I hope someday you realize what you've missed. Vivian. I sank to the floor, the letters scattered around me, tears streaming down my face. My father had a son he apparently never knew about, just like Sister Pauline had said. These letters had been hidden away, probably intercepted by his parents, never making it to him when he was away at college. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Some woman named Vivian had tried desperately to tell him about their child, and his parents had kept the truth from him, which meant somewhere out there, my father had a son, my half-brother, a brother I never knew existed. I was still sitting on the floor, surrounded by letters, when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Sage. Deshawn's voice called. You up here? I quickly tried to gather the letters, but he was already in the doorway. Hey, baby, your mama said. He stopped when he saw my face. What's wrong? What happened? I couldn't speak. I just handed him one of the letters. I watched him read it, watched his expression change from confusion to shock. Your father had another son, he said slowly. It looks like it, I whispered. And he never knew. His parents kept it from him. Deshawn sat down beside me, picking up another letter, then another. This is... He trailed off, shaking his head. Sage, this is huge. Does your mother know? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what to think. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us trying to process what this meant. We should tell your mom, Deshawn said finally. She deserves to know. Your siblings too. I nodded, even though the thought of that conversation made me want to throw up. How do you tell your grieving mother that her dead husband had a secret child? How do you tell your siblings they have a brother they never knew about? But Deshawn was right. We had to tell them. We had to find out the truth. I confronted my mother that afternoon. We were sitting at the kitchen table, just the two of us. Kennedy and Terrell were out making thank you calls to people who'd sent flowers. Deshawn had given us privacy, taking a walk around the neighborhood. I placed the box of letters on the table between us. Mama, I said quietly, I need you to tell me the truth. She looked at the box, and her whole body seemed to deflate. Where did you find those? She whispered. In Daddy's study, on the top shelf of his closet. I paused. Did you know? She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. Yes, she said. I knew. The admission felt like a punch to the gut. How long? Your father told me before we got married, she said softly. His mother confessed it on her deathbed, told him what they'd done, how they'd intercepted the letters, how they'd paid the girl's family to say she'd miscarried. Your father was devastated. He tried to find the woman. Vivian Thornton was her name, but she'd moved away, gotten married, started over. Did he ever find her? Find his son? Mama shook her head. He tried for years, hired a private investigator, but Vivian had remarried and changed her last name. The trail went cold. Eventually, he had to accept that some doors are closed forever. I felt anger rising in my chest. Why didn't you tell us? Why keep this secret? Because it would have broken your father's heart to talk about it. Mama said, her voice cracking. He carried that guilt his whole life, Sage. The guilt of having a son out there who thought he'd been abandoned. A son he couldn't find, couldn't apologize to, couldn't make things right with. She reached across the table and took my hand. Your father was a good man. He didn't deserve what his parents did to him. And that boy, wherever he is, he didn't deserve to grow up thinking his father didn't want him. We cried together then, mourning not just my father's death, but the loss of what could have been, the relationship that never got a chance to exist. This is getting intense, isn't it? Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you won't believe where this is headed. After my conversation with Mama, I couldn't stop thinking about my father's unknown son. I wondered where he was, if he was okay, if he'd had a good life despite everything. I wondered if he even knew Lawrence Bennett was his father, if Vivian had ever told him the truth. That night, lying in bed next to Deshawn, I made a decision. I want to find him, I said into the darkness. Deshawn turned to face me. Find who? My father's son. My brother. I want to find him. Sage, baby, I don't know if that's a good idea. Your mom said your father tried for years. I don't care, I said firmly. I have to try. This is my brother we're talking about. He deserves to know the truth. That Daddy didn't abandon him, that he tried to find him. Deshawn was quiet for a moment. Then he said, okay, we'll find him. Together. I rolled over and kissed him. Thank you. Always, he whispered. The next morning, I called the private investigator my father had used years ago. He was retired now, but he agreed to look at the case again. I remember your father, he said over the phone. Good man. I felt terrible that I couldn't help him find his son. But I'll give it another shot. Technology's better now. Social media, DNA databases. We might have better luck. I gave him all the information from the letters. Vivian Thornton, the approximate age of the child, the last known location. Give me a week, he said. I'll see what I can dig up. That week was torture. Deshawn and I stayed in South Carolina, helping Mama sort through Daddy's affairs. I told Kennedy and Terrell about the letters. They were shocked, upset, but like me, they wanted to find their unknown brother. It's what Daddy would have wanted. Terrell said. The investigator called on day 6. I found him, he said. My heart stopped. His name is Marcus Thornton. He's 37 years old, lives in Atlanta, works as an IT consultant. Atlanta, the same city where I lived. Do you have an address? I asked, my voice shaking. I'll email everything over to you. He said, good luck, Miss Bennett. I hung up and immediately called Deshawn into the room. They found him. I said, he lives in Atlanta. He's an IT consultant. Deshawn's eyes widened. An IT consultant? Sage, what's his name? Marcus Thornton. Why? The color drained from Deshawn's face. What? I said, what is it? Sage. He sat down heavily on the bed. I know Marcus Thornton. The world tilted. What do you mean you know him? We work for the same consulting firm. Different departments, but I've met him at company events. We've worked on a few projects together. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My husband knew my half-brother. They worked at the same company. What were the odds? We need to talk to him. I said, we need to tell him the truth. Deshawn nodded slowly. Yeah, we do. We flew back to Atlanta the next day. I couldn't sleep on the plane. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what I would say to Marcus Thornton. How do you tell someone their whole life has been a lie? Deshawn made contact first. He called Marcus and asked to meet for coffee. Said he had something important to discuss. We met at a cafe in Midtown on a Wednesday afternoon. I saw him before he saw us. Marcus Thornton was tall, with deep brown skin and kind eyes. There was something familiar about him that made my chest ache. He had my father's smile, the same slight dimple in his left cheek. When he spotted Deshawn, he waved and walked over. Hey, man, he said, shaking Deshawn's hand. Then he noticed me. Oh, I didn't know you were bringing your wife. Marcus, this is Sage, Deshawn said. My wife. We need to talk to you about something important. We sat down, and I could see the confusion on Marcus's face. What's this about? He asked. I took a deep breath. When were you born, Marcus? He blinked. October 1987. Why? My father would have been 18. The timeline matched. What do you know about your biological father? I asked softly. His expression hardened. Nothing. And I don't want to know anything. The man abandoned my mother when she was pregnant. He's dead to me. That's not what happened, I said. Marcus, your father didn't abandon you. He didn't even know you existed. I pulled out copies of the letters and slid them across the table. Marcus stared at them for a long moment before picking one up. I watched him read, watched his hands start to shake, watched tears form in his eyes. This is from my mother, he whispered. Yes, I said. She tried to tell him about you. His parents intercepted the letters. They lied to him, told him she'd lost the baby. Then they sent him away to college and made sure he never found out the truth. Marcus looked up at me. How do you know all this? Because Lawrence Bennett was my father too. I said quietly. The words hung in the air between us. We're siblings. I finished. You're my half-brother. Marcus's face went through a dozen emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger, grief. My father, our father, died last week. I continued. I found these letters in his study. He spent years trying to find you, Marcus, years trying to make things right. But he couldn't find you. He's dead. Marcus's voice cracked. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you never got to meet him. He was a good man, the best man I've ever known, and he would have loved you. Marcus put his head in his hands and sobbed. Deshawn and I sat with him, this stranger who was family, and let him grieve for the father he never knew. After Marcus had composed himself, we talked for hours. I told him about our father, about his love of literature, his dedication to his students, his terrible jokes, and his love for old jazz records. I showed him pictures on my phone, Daddy at my wedding, at Kennedy's college graduation, holding Terrell's firstborn son. Marcus listened to everything, drinking in details about a man he'd never met but had wondered about his whole life. My mother told me he didn't want me. Marcus said quietly. She said he chose his education over his family. I grew up hating him. She didn't know the truth either. I said gently, your grandparents lied to everyone. Marcus shook his head. My mother died 5 years ago. Cancer. She went to her grave thinking Lawrence Bennett abandoned us. The tragedy of it all was overwhelming. I have 2 other siblings. I said, Kennedy and Terrell. They want to meet you. If you're ready. Marcus looked at me with those eyes that were so much like my father's. I have sisters and brothers, he said wonderingly. I always wanted siblings. You have them, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. You have us. Don't forget to hit that like button and comment below. This story is far from over, and you need to hear what happens next. We made plans to have dinner that weekend. Me, Deshawn, Marcus, Kennedy, and Terrell. I was nervous about it, but excited too. We were building something beautiful from the ashes of secrets and lies. We were becoming a family, but there was something nagging at me, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It wasn't until we were back in our townhouse that night that it hit me. Deshawn had said he knew Marcus from work, that they'd worked on projects together. But Marcus was an IT consultant. Deshawn was an IT consultant. They both lived in Atlanta. They were both 37 years old. No, wait. I was 35. Deshawn was 37, the same age as Marcus, born in October 1987. Deshawn's birthday was in October too, October 15th. My blood ran cold. Deshawn, I said slowly, when's Marcus's birthday? He looked up from his laptop. What? When's Marcus's birthday? Did he mention the exact date? Deshawn thought for a moment. October 15th. I remember because it's the same as mine. We joked about it at work once. The room started spinning. Same birthday, same year, both IT consultants, both grew up without fathers. Deshaun, I whispered, where did you grow up? Before foster care. His brow furrowed. I don't really remember. I was in the system from when I was really young. Why? Do you know your birth name? Before you were adopted. I was never adopted. Sage. I aged out of foster care. My birth certificate says Deshaun Williams, but one of my caseworkers told me that wasn't my original name. That my mother had called me something else before she died. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. What did she call you? Marcus. She called me Marcus. The world stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The man sitting across from me, my husband of 7 years, the man I'd known since I was 16, was looking at me with growing concern. Sage, what's wrong? Why are you asking me all this? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. It couldn't be. It couldn't be possible. But the pieces were all there, fitting together in a horrible, impossible puzzle. Deshaun Williams, born October 15th, 1987. Mother died when he was young, bounced around foster care. Never knew his father, Marcus Thornton, born October 15th, 1987. Mother was Vivian Thornton, who later remarried. Father was Lawrence Bennett, Marcus Thornton, who became someone else, who lost his name somewhere in the foster care system. Marcus Thornton, who became Deshaun Williams. Oh my God, I whispered. Sage, you're scaring me. What's going on? I looked at him, really looked at him, at the slight dimple in his left cheek, at the shape of his eyes, at features I'd never thought twice about, because why would I? But now I saw it. He looked like my father. He looked like me. Deshaun, I said, my voice shaking. What was your mother's name? Why does that? Please, just tell me. Vivian, he said slowly. Vivian Williams. She remarried when I was a baby. Her husband, my stepfather, he died when I was 4. Then she got sick and social services took me. I barely remember her. Vivian Thornton, who became Vivian Williams. Did you ever know your biological father's name? I whispered. Deshaun shook his head. My mom never talked about him. The case workers said she wouldn't put his name on my birth certificate. They said she was protecting him or something, that he came from a good family, and she didn't want to ruin his life. Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Deshaun. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face. I think you're Marcus Thornton. He stared at me. What? I think you're my father's son. I think you're my half-brother. The words hung in the air like poison. That's insane, Deshaun said, standing up. Sage, that's insane. We just met Marcus Thornton. He's a completely different person. Is he? I was standing too now, my whole body shaking. Same birthday, same year, same city, same job, same mother's name. Deshaun, you said your caseworker told you your birth name was Marcus. That doesn't mean. Your mother was Vivian Thornton. She wrote those letters to my father about her son Marcus. Lots of people are named Vivian. How many of them had a son named Marcus born on October 15th, 1987, in South Carolina, to a father from a good family that she was protecting? Deshaun's face had gone pale. No, he said. No, this can't be happening. But I could see it in his eyes. He knew I was right. We need to call Marcus, I said. The other Marcus. We need to... To what? Deshaun exploded. To ask him if he's actually me? To ask him if he's an imposter? Sage, this is insane. Then how do you explain it? I shouted back. How do you explain all the coincidences? I don't know. But we can't, he couldn't even say it, brothers and sister. husband and wife. The same people. I need you to pause here and really let this sink in. If you haven't already, please like this video and drop a comment. This story is about to take another turn you won't see coming. I called Marcus Thornton's number with shaking hands. He answered on the third ring. Hello. Marcus, this is Sage. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. He sounded confused. Were you adopted? Were you ever in foster care? What? No. I've lived with my mother and stepfather my whole life. Well, until my stepfather died, when I was in college. Why? My legs gave out. I sank onto the couch. Marcus, did your mother ever mention having another child? A child she gave up. There was a long pause. How do you know about that? He said, finally, his voice tight. My heart stopped. What? My mother told me before she died. She said she'd had a baby when she was young, before she married my stepfather. She said she'd had to give him up because she couldn't afford to raise 2 kids alone. She said she thought about him every day. The room was spinning. Did she say when this baby was born? October 1987. Same month and year as me. She said we would have been twins if... He stopped. Oh my God. Are you saying... Did she say what she named him? I whispered. Marcus. She named him Marcus too. She said that's why she gave me that name. So she'd never forget. Twins. Vivian Thornton had twins. She'd kept one and given the other up. And the one she gave up, the one who went into foster care, whose name got changed to Deshaun Williams, was my husband. Marcus, I said, barely able to form the words. I think you have a twin brother. The next few hours were a blur. Marcus came over immediately. When he walked through the door and saw Deshaun standing there, he stopped dead. Oh my God, he whispered. We look exactly alike. And they did. I don't know how I'd never seen it before. Maybe because I'd never had reason to compare them. Maybe because Deshaun and I had been together. So long, he was just Deshaun to me. Not someone I analyzed feature by feature, but standing there, side by side, it was undeniable. Same height, same build, same deep brown skin tone, same eyes, same smile, same slight dimple in the left cheek. Mirror images. Deshaun and Marcus stared at each other, both of them frozen in shock. This can't be real, Marcus whispered. We need a DNA test. I said, my voice hollow. We need to be sure. We went to an urgent care clinic that offered rapid DNA testing. The nurse took swabs from both of them, looking between them with raised eyebrows, but saying nothing. Results in 72 hours. She said, 3 days. 3 days of living in limbo, not knowing if my entire life was built on a foundation that was about to crumble. Deshaun and I barely spoke during those 3 days. What was there to say? We couldn't talk about the possibility that we might be siblings without facing the horror of what that would mean. We couldn't pretend everything was fine, because it so clearly wasn't. We moved through our townhouse like ghosts, occupying the same space but unable to touch, unable to look at each other for too long. I slept in the guest room. I called Kennedy and told her everything. She was silent for a long time after I finished. Sage, she finally said, her voice shaking. What are you going to do if it's true? I don't know. I whispered. I don't know. The results came back on day 3. I met Deshaun and Marcus at the clinic. We sat in a small consultation room, the envelope with the results sitting on the table between us like a bomb. Who wants to open it? The genetic counselor asked gently. None of us moved. Finally, I reached for it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tear the envelope open. I pulled out the paper and read the words that would change everything. Probability of sibling relationship, 99.9%. The paper slipped from my fingers. Deshaun made a sound like he'd been punched. Marcus put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, the counselor said softly. I know this isn't the result you were hoping for. Hoping for, as if hope had anything to do with it anymore. My husband was my brother. The man I'd been sleeping next to for 7 years was my brother. The man I'd given my body to, my heart to, my entire adult life to, was my brother. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I don't remember how I got home that day. I remember Marcus saying something about needing time to process. I remember Deshawn trying to touch my arm and me jerking away like I'd been burned. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor of our townhouse, hugging my knees to my chest and screaming until my throat was raw. The man I loved was my brother, not stepbrother, not half-brother by marriage, full biological brother, same father. And apparently, if Vivian had given birth to twins, then that meant, oh God, we had the same mother too. Deshawn and Marcus were twins, and my father had gotten Vivian pregnant with both of them at the same time, which meant Deshawn wasn't my half-brother. He was my full brother. I threw up again. Deshawn knocked on the bathroom door hours later. Sage, he said quietly, please, we need to talk. Go away. I can't. This is my house too. This is my life too. Sage, please. I opened the door. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen. His face was drawn. We didn't know, he said. Sage, we didn't know. It doesn't matter that we didn't know. I shouted. It doesn't change what we've done. It doesn't change that we're. I couldn't say it. We need to figure out what to do, Deshawn said. What to do? I laughed, and it sounded hysterical even to my own ears. What is there to do? Our marriage is a lie. Everything we've built is built on a lie. It wasn't a lie, he said fiercely. What we had, what we have, that was real. Our love was real. Don't, I said, backing away from him. Don't talk about love. We can't be together. You know that. Why not? His voice broke. Why can't we stay together? Who has to know? I stared at him in disbelief. Are you serious? Deshawn, we're siblings. Brother and sister. We share the same parents. We can't. It's only wrong if we make it wrong, he said desperately. Sage, I love you. I've loved you since we were 16 years old. That doesn't just go away because of some biology we had no control over. Biology we had no control over? I repeated, Deshawn, this isn't just some technicality. This is everything. This is who we are. I'm still the same person I was 3 days ago. He said, you're still the same person. Nothing between us has changed. Everything has changed. I screamed. Everything. We stood there in the hallway, both of us crying, both of us broken. I can't look at you anymore. I whispered. I can't be in the same room with you. I need you to leave. This is my home. Please, I begged. Please just go. I can't do this right now. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he grabbed his keys and walked out. I heard the front door close. And then I was alone with the truth. If you're still with me, please hit that subscribe button. I know this is heavy, but you need to hear how this ends. You need to know how I survived this. I called my mother that night. Mama, I said when she answered, I need to tell you something, and you need to sit down. I told her everything about the DNA test, about the twins, about the horrible, impossible truth that Deshawn was my brother. She was silent for so long I thought the call had dropped. Mama, are you there? I'm here, she said, her voice hollow. Oh, Sage. Oh, baby. I'm so sorry. Did you know Vivian had twins? I asked. No, Lawrence never knew that. The letters only mentioned one child. She gave one up, I said. She kept Marcus and gave up Deshawn. And somehow impossibly, I ended up marrying the one she gave away. What are you going to do? Mama asked. I don't know. Deshawn wants to stay together. Pretend we never found out. And you, I can't, Mama. I can't unknow this. I can't look at him the same way. Every time I think about, I started crying again. Every time I think about what we've done, I want to die. Don't say that, Mama said sharply. Don't you dare say that. You didn't do anything wrong, Sage. Neither of you did. You were victims of circumstance. It doesn't feel that way. I know, baby, I know. We cried together over the phone, mother and daughter, mourning yet another loss. Kennedy flew down from Charlotte the next day. She held me while I sobbed. Didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it, just held me. What do I do? I asked her. Ken, what do I do? I don't know, she said honestly. This is beyond anything I could have imagined. He wants to stay together. He said it doesn't matter. Kennedy pulled back to look at me. What do you want? I want to wake up and have this all be a nightmare. I said, I want my father to be alive. I want to never have found those letters. I want to still believe that my husband was just my husband and not my brother. But that's not reality, Kennedy said gently. No, it's not. So what do you want? In this reality? I thought about it, really thought about it. I want a divorce. I said, finally, I want to end this marriage. I can't live like this, Kennedy. I can't pretend everything's okay when it's not. I can't sleep next to him, knowing what I know. Then that's what you do, Kennedy said. You file for divorce. You start over. How do I start over from this? I whispered, I don't know, but you will, because you're strong, because you're a survivor, because that's who Daddy raised you to be. I hired a divorce attorney the following week. Her name was Patricia Richardson, and she was one of the best family law attorneys in Atlanta. When I told her why I needed a divorce, she went very still. You're certain about the DNA test? She asked. 99.9% certain. She was quiet for a moment. This is going to be complicated. Complicated how? Well, for starters, your marriage is legally void. In Georgia, marriages between siblings, even siblings who didn't know they were related, are considered void ab initio. That means it was never legal to begin with. The words hit me like a physical blow. My marriage had never been real. 7 years. Gone. Erased. As if they'd never existed. What does that mean for me? I asked. It means you'll need to file for an annulment rather than a divorce. The marriage will be declared void. Any assets acquired during the marriage will need to be divided, but there won't be any spousal support since the marriage wasn't legally valid. I nodded numbly. There's something else, Patricia said carefully. Georgia law requires that void marriages due to incest be reported. I'm obligated as an officer of the court to report this to the proper authorities. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means there will be an investigation. The state will want to verify the DNA test. They'll interview both of you. It's unlikely there will be any criminal charges since neither of you knew, but there will be a record of my shame, of my nightmare, of the fact that I'd unknowingly committed incest with my own brother. Can we keep this quiet? I asked desperately. Patricia shook her head. Court records are public. Once the annulment is filed, anyone can access it. I'm sorry, Sage. There's no way to keep this completely private. I felt the walls closing in. I met with Deshawn one more time before filing the papers. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop near his new apartment. He'd moved out of our townhouse the week before. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. I got a lawyer. I said without preamble, I'm filing for annulment. Sage, please. It's the only option, Deshawn. Our marriage was never legal. It's void. So what? He said. We move to a different state. We start over. There are places where. Where what? Where siblings can get married. Where this is okay. I shook my head. That's not a life I can live. But you can live without me? His voice cracked. After everything we've been through, after 16 years together. I have to, I said, tears streaming down my face. Don't you understand? I can't look at you without seeing what we are. I can't touch you without feeling sick. I can't be your wife anymore. Deshawn, don't call me that, he said bitterly. If we're being honest about who we really are, call me Marcus. That's who I was supposed to be. You'll always be Deshawn to me, I said softly. But you can't be my husband. You have to be my brother now, and I have to figure out how to live with that. He put his head in his hands. This is killing me. It's killing me too. We sat in silence, two people who had loved each other for most of their lives, destroyed by a truth neither of us could have predicted. I'm sorry, he finally said. I'm sorry that loving you turned into this nightmare. I'm sorry too, I whispered. The annulment was finalized 6 weeks later. The judge was kind but firm. She declared our marriage void, divided our assets, and signed the papers that legally erased 7 years of my life. I walked out of that courthouse a single woman, a woman who had lost her father, her husband, and her sense of reality all in the span of 2 months. But I was still standing. Broken, yes. Devastated, yes. But standing. The news got out, of course. Someone at the courthouse leaked it to a local news blogger. Within days, our story was everywhere. Atlanta couple discovers their siblings after father's funeral. The headlines were cruel and sensational. People I'd known for years stopped talking to me. Parents at my school whispered when I walked by. I got looks at the grocery store, at church, everywhere. Some people were sympathetic. Most were just curious, treating our tragedy like entertainment. I took a leave of absence from teaching. I couldn't face the classroom, couldn't face the questions, couldn't face the pity in people's eyes. Kennedy suggested I move to Charlotte for a while, get away from Atlanta and all the memories. But I couldn't run. This was my city, my life, and I'd be damned if I let shame drive me away from it. This is the part where I want you to really hear me. If this story is resonating with you, if you're still here after everything I've shared, please leave a comment and let me know. Your support is what gets me through. I started therapy. Dr. Williams, no relation to Deshawn, thank God, specialized in trauma and grief. You've experienced multiple losses simultaneously. She told me in our first session, your father, your marriage, your sense of identity and safety. That's an enormous amount of trauma to process. I feel like I'm drowning, I admitted, like I can't catch my breath. That's a normal response to what you've been through. The question is, what do you need to stay afloat? I thought about it. I need to understand why this happened. I need to make sense of it. Sometimes there is no sense to be made. Dr. Williams said gently, sometimes terrible things happen for no reason other than chance and circumstance. The question isn't always why it happened. Sometimes the question is how you'll move forward despite it happening. Move forward, as if that were possible. But over the weeks and months that followed, I started to see that maybe it was. I reconnected with Marcus, the other Marcus, my twin brother, who I'd known my whole married life as my husband. It was awkward at first. We met for coffee once a week, trying to figure out how to be siblings instead of spouses. I started going by my birth name. He told me one day, Marcus Thornton. It felt wrong to keep using Deshawn Williams after everything. How does it feel? I asked. Strange, like I'm meeting myself for the first time. He paused. I met our other brother too, the Marcus who was raised by Mom. How did that go? It was surreal. We're identical twins, but we're completely different people. He had a mother who loved him, a stable home. He went to college, had a normal life. And you didn't, I said softly. No, I didn't. I bounced around foster care, barely graduated high school, had to fight for everything I have. He looked at me, and then I found you, and for 16 years I had something good, something real, until I found out it was built on a lie. It wasn't a lie, I said. What we had was real. It just wasn't what we thought it was. Does that make it better or worse? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe both. I also got to know my other brother, the Marcus who was raised as Marcus Thornton. He was kind and gentle, and he welcomed me into his life without hesitation. I always wanted siblings, he told me. I just never imagined I'd get them like this. He introduced me to his wife and kids. His life was normal and stable, and everything mine had once been. I felt envious and grateful all at once. We started having family dinners. Me, Marcus Thornton, my brother Marcus, formerly Deshawn, Kennedy, and Terrell. It was strange and awkward and painful, but it was also healing. We were building something new from the wreckage, a family that shouldn't exist, but did. A family bound together by tragedy and blood, and the refusal to let secrets destroy us completely. 6 months after the annulment, I went back to teaching. The first day was hard. The students stared. Some parents requested their children be moved to different classes. But I held my head high and did my job. I was still a good teacher, still passionate about literature, still capable of inspiring young minds. What had happened to me didn't change that. And slowly, people stopped staring, stopped whispering, stopped treating me like a cautionary tale. I was just Miss Bennett again, their English teacher. I also started speaking publicly about my experience. A women's organization reached out, asking me to share my story at a conference about trauma and resilience. I almost said no, but then I thought about all the people out there carrying shame for things that weren't their fault, all the people drowning in circumstances they didn't create. Maybe my story could help them. So I said yes. I stood on that stage in front of 300 women and told them everything about finding the letters, about discovering my father had a son, about the impossible coincidence that led to my husband being my brother, about the shame and the grief, and the feeling that I'd never be whole again. And then I told them about the choice I made, the choice to survive, to rebuild, to refuse to let this define me. I didn't choose what happened to me, I said, but I chose how I responded to it. I chose to keep living, to keep fighting, to keep believing that my life still had value and purpose despite everything I'd lost. The applause was deafening. Afterward, dozens of women came up to me. Some shared their own stories of trauma and shame. Others just hugged me and thanked me for being brave enough to speak. That's when I realized something. My pain had purpose. My story, as horrible as it was, could help others. And that was a kind of redemption I hadn't known I needed. We're almost at the end now. If you've stayed with me through this whole journey, thank you. Please make sure you're subscribed because I have more stories to share, and they all end the same way, with survival, with strength, with winning. It's been 3 years since my father's funeral. 3 years since my world fell apart. I'm 38 now, single, living in a new apartment in a different part of Atlanta. I still teach. I still speak at conferences. I've even started writing a book about my experience. My relationship with Marcus, both of them, is good. We're family now in the truest sense. We celebrate holidays together. We check in on each other. We've built something real from the ashes of what was. I still go to therapy. Some wounds don't fully heal, and that's okay. I've learned to live with the scars. I've also learned that shame only has power if you let it. Yes, I unknowingly married my brother. Yes, that's a fact I'll carry for the rest of my life. But it's not who I am. I'm Sage Bennett. I'm a teacher, a sister, a daughter, a survivor. I'm a woman who loved deeply and lost terribly and kept going anyway. And that is my victory. Not that I avoided the pain, not that I escaped the shame, but that I walked through it and came out the other side, still standing, still believing in love, even if I'm terrified to try again, still believing in family, even though mine is complicated and messy, still believing in myself, even though I've been broken and rebuilt more times than I can count. People ask me sometimes if I regret finding those letters, if I wish I'd never known the truth. The answer is complicated. Yes, part of me wishes I could go back to that simple life where my father was just my father and my husband was just my husband. But that life was built on secrets and lies. It wasn't real. This life, messy and painful as it is, this is real. And I'd rather live in painful truth than comfortable delusion. I went to my father's grave last week. It's something I do once a month. I sat on the grass and talked to him, like I always do. I understand now, Daddy, I said, I understand why you tried so hard to find your son, why you carried that guilt your whole life. You were a good man who got caught in other people's lies, just like me and Marcus, just like all of us. I forgive you for the secrets, for not telling us about him. You were trying to protect us from pain, even if it didn't work out that way. I hope you're at peace now. I hope you and Mama Vivian have found each other wherever you are. I hope you got to apologize, to make things right. I'm going to be okay, Daddy. It's taken me 3 years to say that, and mean it, but I'm going to be okay. You raised me to be strong, to be dignified, to survive whatever life throws at me. And I am surviving. I'm more than surviving. I'm living. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything. I laid fresh flowers on his grave and walked back to my car. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. And for the first time in 3 years, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, beautiful things were still possible for me. So that's my story. The story of how I went to bury my father and discovered a truth that shattered my entire life. The story of how I lost everything and had to build myself back up from nothing. The story of how shame and scandal and unimaginable circumstances tried to break me, and how I refused to stay broken. If you're going through something right now, something that feels impossible, something that makes you want to give up, please hear me when I say this. You can survive it. You can walk through the fire and come out the other side. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. There will be days when you don't think you can take one more step, but you can. You will, because you're stronger than you know. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about. Thank you for listening to my story. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Share your own stories of survival and strength. We need each other. We need to know we're not alone in our pain. Until next time, remember, no matter what life throws at you, you have the power to choose how you respond. Choose survival. Choose strength. Choose yourself. This is Sage Bennett, and I'm still standing.